Greetings everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of the Senturus Knowledge Series. Today we're going to be discussing the topic of how you can streamline your Cognos migrations and consolidations. Today's agenda will do some quick introductions of our speakers, and we'll get right into the topic of the migration challenge, and we'll do an overview of the migration assistant for Cognos, discuss common scenarios, use cases for the migration assistant, and we'll follow that up with a demonstration and stick around through some real quick, great free additional resources. Learn a little bit about Senturus for the always great Q&A at the end. With regards to the Q&A, we have the microphones muted on everybody out of courtesy for our presenters. However, we encourage you to enter questions via the GoToWebinar control panel. So go ahead and enter questions in there, and we will try our best to answer them during the webinar. If for some reason we are unable to, we will post a written response document along with the deck today and a recording of the webinar on, again, senturus.com in the Knowledge Center. So today I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues Todd Schumann and Song Gao. Todd has over 19 years of business analytics experience across multiple industries. He also regularly connects with the IBM product development team. He's been at the forefront of Cognos Analytics upgrade and installation process since it debuted. He lives with his wife and 2 daughters outside of Washington, DC in Virginia. And Song is one of our developers and is responsible for not only developing the migration assistant, but also the Senturus Analytics connector, a connector that allows Cognos data to be leveraged via Tableau and Power BI for data visualization purposes. And the Senturus migration assistant utility that exposes Cognos report metadata in a series of additional reports to speed BI system migrations, which is what we're discussing today. My name is Mike Weinhauer. I'm a director here at Senturus. Among my various roles, I host and sometimes present, as in today, on various topics related to business analytics. So thank you all for joining us here today. We always ask some questions about our audience and what's going on in their organization as it pertains to the topic. So I'm going to launch our first poll here and ask you all to respond. This is a multiple choice poll. What are your goals for Cognos? Are you changing an underlying data source? Are you moving to the cloud? Are you migrating to a different BI platform? Are you looking to just clean up your Cognos environment or something else? Let's see if we can get to 75%. All right, we're at 75%. I'll close it and share it back. So you should be seeing that now. So about a quarter changing data sources, closer to a third moving to the cloud, a little over 20% migrating to a new platform, the majority cleaning up the Cognos environment. That's very interesting. And then 20% is other. Be interested in wondering what that other is, okay? And then our second poll here is, how many Cognos reports does your organization have? This is a more straightforward one. We're missing one of the entries there, but you get the idea. Is it less than 500? Between 500 and 1,000, between 1,000 and 10,000, or more than 10,000. Or if you don't know, you can say you don't know. Great. I'm going to go ahead and close this out and share it back with you all. So about 20% on the small side, 15% on the kind of small medium size, and then most of you are in that 1,000 to 10,000 range, and then another 10% with over 10,000. See, that's pretty good range of different sizes of Cognos environments there. Oh, there it is. Weird place to have a build, but okay. So thanks for sharing your input there. Let's get into the core of the presentation here. We have quite a bit to cover. So the migration challenge, it's a bit of a redundant phrase because migrations are sort of inherently challenging. They bring the promise of better performance and the ability to harness new functionality that will ideally enable better, faster analytics and drive better business outcomes, enable self-service analytics and things like that. But it comes at the peril of risk and complexity and time and cost. So they can be very daunting. And they come in many flavors, which we'll discuss going through here. The good news is that a well-designed BI system, the complexity is hidden. So when it's properly built, the data flows through from cryptic source systems and massive data warehouses with thousands, tens of thousands of tables through complex ETL logic and transformations into elaborate data models, and then out into complex reports and dashboards that are ideally easily consumed by the end user. However, the bad news is it's still there, and it's even worse. All of you who work in the trenches, know that how many times has someone come to you with a report and they say, "Oh, look at can you build this report or move this report? It should be really straightforward. It looks really easy, like it's an Excel spreadsheet." And you look at it and you're like, "Yeah, I know what's behind that thing, and it's going to be a huge mess." So that complexity is all there, and of course, the more complex that environment is, the trickier the migration is, right? So there's very complex Cognos content. You have several tens, hundreds of models and packages, and lots of data sources. Again, maybe thousands of reports. It's multi-layered, duplicate, and overlapping in terms of the reports and packages. Models have proliferated and grown over the years, and Framework Manager is a 20-year-old plus tool, and likely you've had some turnover in the organization from the first time those models were built. The years of use, just like anywhere else here, it creates more complexity, and it gets messy, right? You have lots of reports in my folders. You've got duplicate, unused, and overlapping reports. There's all kinds of challenges here. Not to mention businesses merging and realigning. So you've got M&A activity, and then you have platform and data source migration, for example, moving things to cloud. So there's the need for migrations for various reasons, and lift and shift, just taking what you have and trying to plop it into a new environment and expecting it to be better, simply doesn't work. Right? When you move homes, do you just pack everything into the truck and take it to the new house? Maybe, but probably not, right? You have a garage sale, you bring a bunch of stuff to Goodwill, you throw some things away, and you clean things up, right? It's the perfect opportunity to do that. A failure to rationalize and go through that exercise leads to bloated migrations, suboptimal accessibility and performance, unhappy users, and lower adoption. A big part of this is unraveling the Cognos content, right? All that complexity and that kind of dead weight that's in there. So to scope and complete your consolidation, your migration and project, you have to sort of unravel all that stuff, the models, the reports, and the usage. And we'll demonstrate how painful that is in terms of time and inaccuracy and just access. The Cognos audit is designed to answer some of these questions, right, about what's being used and stuff like that, but it's only at the report level, and it doesn't really break down the reports into all those objects that you would need, or the model or package level. And it's limited. It can't tell you which reports are never run, or can you view the data in the My Content, right? So you don't have a consolidated view of the data sources and models that are needed and used. And there's a lot of challenges around that. And this can be very time consuming, and it leaves you kind of with this, this poor frazzled woman who's like, oh, where do I even start with this? How do I scope it? Is it even worth it? And how much is this going to cost versus just renewing the Cognos license, right? So you may decide that the cost outweighs the benefit. And there go my vacation plans, right? You're going to be working nights and weekends, because analytics is the backbone of so many organizations that you rely on these things. So you can't, failure is not an option, and downtime isn't even really an option, right? So there's going to be a time there where you're going to be running both environments till you can cut over, and that's costly and risky, and all the things that go with that. So all the aforementioned challenges here are what inspired us to create a powerful tool that helps to significantly streamline the migration process. Now, it's important to have a methodology to approach this as well. And at Senturus, we've been doing migrations in their various flavors since we started doing this over 20 years ago. And the methodology is critically important. The better the upfront effort to assess, create a roadmap, and optimize the migration, the greater your chances of executing and doing the last steps successfully on time and on budget, and whatnot. Really, they go up. As Frank Lloyd Wright famously said, it's easier to make changes in pencil than with a wrecking ball. In other words, if you don't do your work up here, once you've gone and done this, you might be looking at a lot of rework, right? Which of course increases risk, cost, and time. So the migration assistant helps you automate what can be an extremely slow, labor-intensive, and manual process. So how does it work? Well, it helps to eliminate hundreds of manual clicks to discover data fields, filters, calculations, all the stuff that you need to move. And it programmatically decodes and inventories your multi-layered Cognos reports and packages, pipes that into a database, and then surfaces some pre-built content for you. And not to mention, you can create ad hoc queries depending on your needs to that database to identify all these details about your environment. And we'll show you all this stuff in the tool in a little bit. So how it works is it really helps with that upfront process whereby you can eliminate unused and duplicate or broken items, identify those. You can plan and prioritize your higher priority or impacted items to do those first. Simplify and consolidate similar items. So again, understanding what the capabilities of Cognos are versus the new tool you might be moving to, you might be able to replace, like 5,000 reports with 500 reports that have hierarchies and drill throughs and prompts and whatnot. So that's a big part of that exercise. You can automate a lot of that manual work and eliminate the errors that come along with manually pulling all that information and putting it in spreadsheets and whatnot. And then what we do is actually create a report and dashboard recipes, if you will. So we give you the cookbook, and it says, here's what this report is made of, and here's what you need in one place to go and rebuild that somewhere else. And it reduces the need for what we call, unicorns, these kind of mythical people that understand both the source and target platforms, which is non-trivial, right? They understand the architecture of the source and target, the different tools, the nomenclatures. Again, what are the capabilities of the new tool versus the old? Can you even do it, right? There are things that, if you're say moving to Tableau and you have invoices, good luck doing that in Tableau, right? It's not made for that. So you have to consider all that sort of thing. And those unicorns are people that, we have several of them here at Senturus that we call them multilingual, that they understand Cognos and Power BI and Tableau and can do that. But you want to use them and kind of sprinkle them through the project and have people that don't have to be those unicorns be able to execute on your project. So again, how it works here is that it extracts the Cognos metadata into all its component pieces. So reports, all the pieces, pages, lists, list columns, query items, filters. The data models breaks down the namespaces, query subject, query items, and relationships. And it pulls in the lineage between the reports and the models and the database. So all the pieces that you need to migrate whatever it is you're going to migrate. And it pulls the report execution history. So it sort of marries the audit information along with all this metadata and pipes all that into a SQL Server database. And we provide a Power BI workbook that you can use that I'll show you in just a little bit. And we also have a set of Cognos content as well that basically reports on the metadata. And you can do ad hoc queries because, again, it's a SQL Server relational database. So now let's talk about a few scenarios where different migration scenarios where you might use the migration assistant, where it might help you. And we'll discuss 3 of those. The first one is a data source change. And the migration assistant here can help you accurately scope, budget, resource, and manage those data source migrations. Now, this is where you're moving from one data source to another. Maybe you have a new data warehouse. Maybe you're moving from on-prem to cloud. And what it does is it helps you, it identifies which reports and models rely on that legacy data source, combines the inventory and usage statistics so you know, here's some stuff I can leave behind, here's the stuff I really need to move over. It lists all the tables and columns used. It allows you to search for specific keywords in queries and filters for doing things like compatibility checking of functions, and helps you to identify and really, plan out the migration process. So I know, Todd, if you can talk a little bit about a large financial institution that we worked with where they moved databases a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So this has been coming up more and more often on our radar, customers who are looking to move, stay on Cognos, but move data sources from on-prem to cloud, or just various other, moving from vendor to vendor. And what the tool does is it's able to identify, what reports are targeting what data sources. So this specific client had, I think, about 17,000 reports in hundreds of different FM models, and there was combinations of Teradata, which was the source that they wanted to move off of, on-premise Teradata. It was Teradata. They also had Teradata blended with Oracle and other various database tools that we kind of labeled as hybrid. And then we had non-Teradata based source. So the first thing to do was, show me all the reports that are hitting Teradata sources, and let's flag those. On top of that, we can get down to table level. So each report we can see it's hitting Teradata and it's going after these specific schemas and tables and even columns. We have that kind of lineage to get down to that level of detail. And we also wanted to target the audit data. So we only want to bring over reports and migrate reports that have been run in the last 6 months. So by running that inventory and putting everything into this migration assistant database, syncing that up with audit, and then creating custom reports to kind of target the reports we wanted, we were able to kind of get this large output that was giving us the tables, the usage, everything we needed. Once we kind of had that, we were able to then sync it up with a migration schedule that was being provided by the team that was moving from Teradata to the Google BigQuery cloud database. And they were doing migrations in groups of tables, so a couple hundred, a week, something like that. So we could see which reports were candidates to be moved as they were being completed. So it really kind of worked out really well with being able to kind of capture all those different pieces, getting down to that level of detail we needed, and then being able to move them in chunks to kind of sync up with the migration team. The other challenge that we had to do with this project was there are lots of different database specific functions, especially like date functions, and ones that we identified as incompatible with the new platform. So for example, like there's a common like toDate function that converts a date from one format to another. That syntax was completely different in the GCP database. So we wanted to find about 10 to 15 different database functions scattered through, again, the 17,000 reports. It would take you probably years to manually go through each report manually and find that. We just put in search strings, scan through every expression in the entire content store, and we found every report that was using that function. We could then also find out who the owner and the developer was, and then send out emails to them and ask them to switch, function X with function Y, and then make sure that was done. And then that way, once we converted the reports over, we weren't going to get errors when we try to run it against the new database. So lots of different ways to kind of work with these data source changes that are becoming more and more common today. And I think this tool just saves a ton of time and effort as far as trying to accomplish those goals.
Great. Thanks, Todd. That's very helpful. So again, the migration assistant combines inventory and usage statistics, enabling you to create a prioritized and efficient migration plan, and minimizes and keeps that project scope nice and tight by focusing on your high priority database objects, eliminating unused objects, and easily tracking down, those differences between, function capabilities and all that stuff in the database. So the second use case we'll discuss here is the one people most commonly think about, and that's actually migrating analytics platforms. Now that could be migrating from the whole thing from one tool to the other, right? You're going from Cognos to Power BI or Cognos to Tableau or vice versa, whatever that is. Where you might be in what we see more commonly now is migrating a portion of that environment or a department or a subject area, right? Instead of whole hog, you kind of partition it out to spread that out and not eat the whole elephant in one meal. And the other one is you might be migrating on the same tool, but between major versions, right? So in a lot of cases, when they really kind of do a re-architecture and a redesign, you don't just unfortunately run the software and upgrade it. It's in order to take advantage of new things. There's incompatibilities. You want to go through that rationalization process. So it's really more of a migration than an upgrade per se. And in these instances, the migration assistant again helps by identifying the data sources, inventorying the report design components, and it gives you that recipe book of how to what your models and packages and reports are comprised of, and gives you that recipe book for how to rebuild that, right? The data items, the calculations, the filters, the SQL, whatever that is. It also helps you to prioritize identifying the most used reports and show the rarely used and unused reports that you can cull or deprioritize at a minimum. Now, Todd, I think you have some experience here and a little comment on that as well, huh?
Yeah, definitely. So this is sort of when we at least envision this tool, the main use case that I was thinking of, as a longtime Cognos developer who's been picking up, Power BI and Tableau. I've been asked to, recreate things in other platforms, and it's just been extremely time consuming to kind of have to capture all the information from a single report, just the amount of clicks, navigating from the pages, the objects, the queries, the query items, the filters. Just getting the report itself is time consuming. Then you got to go backtrack it through the FM model, which has multiple layers, and it's just lots of complexity, tables, joins, things like that. So being able to kind of get this sort of single output page where you can just kind of click and get everything you need on a single screen is just such a time-saving value, in my opinion, that I find it, just saves some of these projects. I mean, especially when you're talking hundreds of thousands of reports, I just don't see how it could be done without just throwing dozens of people and hundreds and thousands of hours at these projects. So, you're going to show a demo of this in a little bit. I've got a webinar I did last year, and I think, Mike, you've got a blog post you're working on that should be out shortly as well. That kind of just shows, what we call the old method of manually capturing these reports in the specs versus, how much easier it is to use this tool. So we'll definitely get a chance to show you that in a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Todd. And then the sort of third use case here is that optimizing your Cognos footprint. So I guess the polls were a little bit of foreshadowing there in terms of what we were going to talk about. But if you're just looking to, put your Cognos environment on a diet and optimize that cost of ownership, the migration assistant helps you to identify rarely used, unused reports, and the reports that are used the most by the most users. Identify underused user licenses. So you got people that aren't using the system that you're paying for licenses for. You can optimize that. You can shrink packages safely by removing unreferenced areas, right? Kind of call back some of that stuff that might make your reporting environment less desirable and cumbersome for those users when you're really trying to enable self-service. And in this case, there are complementary tools here which many of you likely own. The difference here is that we provide the insights, but implementing the changes requires those complementary tools or consulting services. The migration assistant really just provides the deeper insights into the Cognos audit data and combines the two. So the result there is happier users, lower costs, and increased adoption because your environment's more accessible and easy to use because you've given it the renovation. Todd, any comments on that?
Yeah, just that it's going to just save you so much time to be able to get this information out. It's, without having the access and the visibility into this level of detail, it's just, with the way Cognos is designed, it isn't easy to get that information. So you'll see once it gets the demo that it just such a different way to look at your data than you've ever had access to in the past. It's just very valuable, in my opinion.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so then without further ado, let's do a demo here. So what I'm going to do first is kind of show you what the kind of the old way was. And so in this demo, what we have is I'm in my Cognos environment here, and I have a report that is called Todd Report. And I'm just going to run that report, just show you what it looks like, right? And we created it for purposes of this demonstration to show that, right, you have it's, I don't know, I'd call this maybe a fairly simple report, but it has some complexity to it. It's got 3 pages. It's got a cross tab with my product lines and years and revenue, and a bar chart, right, a vertically stacked bar chart with, again, revenue and year and the same information expressed visually in a bar chart. The second page shows my quantity by order method type and a simple list and a pie chart kind of breaking that stuff down so you can see its contribution to the whole. And then the last one is a map of gross profit, right, with some conditional formatting. So there's, several pages in here, different visualization types and whatnot. So if I wanted to move this into something like Power BI or Tableau, for example, I obviously have to understand the Cognos environment and the tools. So what I have to do is go into Report Studio, which is, this isn't a tool that you just sort of pick up and use. It's a very robust, fairly complex tool that's not always, the most intuitive. And the first thing I notice is that I have this web environment, is that I have just a ton of metadata here, right? If I drill into this, I have HR, and I've got nested namespaces and folders, and just to get to the data, there's so much stuff going on here, right? I've got an inventory area, I've got a retailers area, and I have a sales area. Now, fortunately, I understand how to use Report Studio. I know this report, so I'm able to go into it and say, okay, well, I know that this report has 3 pages, and I can see here that it has 3 different queries. And then what I have to do is I kind of have to go into the various components here to see where they came from. So I have to drill into each one of these things and see that, oh yeah, this comes from sales query products product line. Got it. So I know that it's from my Go Data Warehouse package, and that it comes from sales query, right, product line. So, okay, great. I got that information. And now I have to repeat this for everything else. And I see this is sales query time year. And the upshot of this is I know that, okay, maybe I've got some calculations in here. Here's a filter that I put in here for just the United States. And I have to do that for each query on each page. And then I transfer all this information into a large and growing spreadsheet that I'm then going to reference when I go and pull that into the other tool, right? So now that I've sort of done my forensics on the report, and I know that, okay, all I really need out of this metadata is this one piece kind of buried down here, this chunk here, and I don't even need all of that for this particular report. Then I have to go into the metadata and figure that out first before I can start doing anything. And here's where things get really interesting. Now, sorry for the eye chart, this is Cognos Framework Manager. Yes, it is old. Yes, it is unattractive. And yes, it is very sophisticated though. So you can see I've got 2,200 objects just at the sort of top level here. And this is their sample model that ships with the product. And it's actually very robust and complex. So it shows, here's the package that is used in that report. So I'd have to drill into that again, understanding this tool, which is not something you're just going to sort of go pick up. There's, the training for this is like a week long, and that just sort of gets you started. And I can see here's all the stuff that's in that Report Studio report, right? And I know I'm just going to want to pull from that the sales and marketing information that is here. Now, I knew where that was, right? I've got a million different namespaces and folders in here, but I knew where that was, and I can go sort of target this stuff. Now, it gets more interesting because this is a modeled according to best practices in Cognos, where you have multiple layers of abstraction up from the database layer. So I'm not done by just saying, oh yeah, here's my sales fact. I have to go find it, right? And then here it is in the business view, which is another layer down. And I can see that this fact table is comprised of quantity, unit cost, unit price, and then there's a couple of calculations in here, right? So I have to pull all this information out and make sure I'm capturing that, and that goes into my, again, burgeoning spreadsheet. And I can see that this, in fact, comes from, these all come from SLS underscore sales fact dot quantity, right? They're all coming from this SLS sales fact, which tells me that I need to go down another layer into the database view, into the sales and marketing data. And again, I sort of know where this is because I've been playing with this. And I finally get down to, here's my database, Great Outdoors Warehouse, and here's my select star statement. Now, imagine things like, again, you have calculations here. You might have things like parameters and macros and custom SQL. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this that, again, you have to sort of know the tool, probably put this into a large and burgeoning spreadsheet, and then go and recreate this in your target environment. And now imagine you have to do that for multiple packages, models, times n number of reports. And you start to look like that poor woman in the slide where you're like, wow, this thing is big and scary. So, and I'm not even going to show like rebuilding it in the next environment, right? So that's just a simple example, a relatively simple example, and I'm not even showing you all the pain and suffering that goes into that. So this is what inspired us to create the Migration Assistant utility. And the way this works is, and I'm sort of showing this in desktop, so it's a little cleaner on the web, but I wanted to use desktop here for purposes of this webinar. Is again, we've introspected the Cognos environment, piped that into a database, and then we provide this this report that provides an overview of the entire Cognos environment. Then gives you different pages that allow you to drill into reports, executions, and relationships depending on your use case and what you're trying to accomplish. Now, you have a drop down here that shows all of the packages, and you can further drill down and select specific paths. You can multi-select. In this case, I've just selected my two my two main packages, which is my Go Data Warehouse, the one that my report's in, and my Go Sales Query for purposes of showing the overview, where I have statistics on those two packages as it pertains to the entire environment, right? So it shows me I have 6 packages, I have 114 namespaces, of which I'm using 4 and I'm not using 110. So 217 query subjects, using 12, not using 205, 14 data sources, right? You get the idea. I have this overview, so I have a whole lot of information here that is useful in terms of me being able to rationalize, and there's probably a lot of stuff I can cut out of here. And the way this works is every time I select something in here, it cross filters everything else. So you're able to do sort of a top-down approach where if I pick a report, it cross filters all these other ones where I can see, oh yeah, this comes from this namespace in the model, comes from these 4 query subjects, and uses these 4 underlying tables. So you just saved me the trip out to Cognos to look at that, to see where that metadata come from. And it comes from the Go Data Warehouse from those tables. And it's the data source Go Data Warehouse, it's a SQL Server database, and it's the schema Go Sales DW, right? So very easy for me to go sort of top down or from a report down, or if I wanted to do that, that data source migration scenario, I can pick Go Data Warehouse, and it's going to filter sort of upwards, right? So I can see here's all the tables in that data source. Here are the upstream model query subjects and namespaces, and here are all the reports that are touched by that, along with usage statistics, right? Now I don't have any usage statistics in here for this one because it's sort of demo data, but you would be able to see that. Now, going into the reports tab, again, you have something similar here where I can go in and pick I can filter by a particular package. I can search for a particular report, right? And if I pick a report, it gives me, this is where I get that recipe book of what that report was made of. Now remember, that report had 3 pages, it had 3 queries in it, and it had the various objects, right? My map, my pie chart, the list, the combo, and which queries those belong to, as well as the query items, the filter expressions, and then the underlying tables that are used in that report. So this is that recipe book that says, you know what, if I want to rebuild Todd report, I don't have to go into all those tools and figure all this stuff out. I can just pull this up here and I get a summary of it. And for example, if I pick a query item, I can then go look at the lineage. And when I go into the lineage analysis for product line, I can see, I can track this back through to the model and see that this, you know, ultimately goes down to this sales query products product line through the business view to the model query subjects product line data item. Returning back to this, I can go over to the executions page. And now this is where I can define a date range here. Oh, this is probably why I'm not getting any usage here because I don't have my date set right. Sorry, guys. Bear with me here. Let me update that. Nope, still nothing. And what this does is, again, allows me to look at all the various packages, and I can see that I can sort by the run count, and I'm looking at a report and I can see who used it, right? So I can see what reports were used, which reports were not used, and who all my users are, and when they ran those, and was it recent? So by doing this, this is all this audit information. I can see how many reports I have, who uses them, when they use them, do they use them frequently? Have they not used them? Have they not used them frequently? So this really helps with that rationalization exercise. And then the last button over here is my relationships tab, where this is really all about that model. And again, remembering that you have these various levels of abstraction, you have the ability to pick, you know, your package or packages and sort of focus that information. So I'm gonna go back down to my Go Data Warehouse and focus on that. I can see all the important information in here by all objects, or I can focus on the model layer or the database layer. So if I'm looking at the model layer, for example, and I look at products, I can see that products joins using this cardinality on the left side and the right side to sales. It's a one-to-many, and what that join criteria is. So, right, you have an equijoin, a non-equijoin, if it's an inner join, an outer join, whatever that is. And then you can see the other items that it joins to. So it's connected to product forecast and return items, and I can see that all the way down to the expression in the database. So this is great because it saves you from really having to go through all that complexity in Framework Manager, and it's just right here for you in a report that we provide to you as a default output from the system. So again, you can see, I can just go to this report and I have the recipe for all this stuff instead of having to go through the pain and agony of doing all the forensics in Cognos, putting it in a spreadsheet, and then finally, you know, doing that in the new tool. Now and we do also have, as I said before, a set of reports that we provide for Cognos as well. Sorry, I lost my place here. Now, so that's the demonstration. Getting back to the presentation here, the requirements for the tool are pretty straightforward. We support Cognos 10 and higher, including OEM versions. It requires a SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio 2016 or higher. And if you want to use the Power BI report, obviously you need Power BI Desktop, and you can just use the free version for that. A little bit more about the Migration Assistant. Todd mentioned this earlier. We have a case study up on Senturus.com under Products, Cognos Migration Assistant. You can see the link there. We have a sample dashboard up there, and there is a demonstration. So it's actually very, it's similar to this. I don't think it goes into the stuff I did in Framework Manager and Report Studio. We are doing a comparison video that'll be up there shortly. on that, but there's a lot of information up there. And there are other webinars on migrations that Todd mentioned in the Knowledge Center, so go check that out. So the way we sort of see migrations sort of going down are, and we can help you at Senturus at any point along the line here, is if you want to talk to us about this, we'll have a conversation with you and talk about the business needs and the overall migration for an hour, and then we'll do another technical discovery with you to kind of understand the versions and you know the feeds and speeds, if you will. And then that kind of flows down into more of that, you know, again, that assess and or estimate part of the process, where the assessment is a 1 week engagement where we run the tool and we provide you that summary view, that first page sort of that I showed you, with a sort of rough order of magnitude, scope, and costs. The thing I didn't show today, because it's we're still working on the visualizations for that a little bit, was we also do the Migration Assistant also does a report and model complexity scoring as an output, and that's something that you can sort of tweak, right? You give weight to complex queries, or you know, the number of queries get points, and we score it, and then you can sort of bucket those, and that really helps to say, okay, you know, your environment is 50% simple reports, 25% medium reports, and 25% very complex reports. Same for your models, and that helps you really kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. And then the estimate is a slightly longer engagement at 3 weeks, where it dives deeper and doesn't just provide that rough order of magnitude and rough cost idea, but drills down into the specific resource types that might be needed in a rough task outline to give you a much more precise estimate of duration and costs, with the idea of, you know, then being able to, you know, do that go no go decision and seek budgetary approval for what you ultimately land on. And then you move into the actual execution of that project, where you have the design, build, test, and deploy. So you migrate the data layer, then you migrate the semantic layer, and you migrate the report layer. Right? That's sort of a high-level look of what that looks like. Now, your mileage may vary depending on, you know, what your use case is and what your environment is, and all that sort of stuff. But this is sort of the process there. Scott, did I miss anything there? Anything you want to add, or?
No, I think you captured it quite well, Mike. I guess one of the things that I'll call out, and it's you know, for the attendees, I'm one of the people who takes these calls, these, you know, business need call and the technical discovery call with folks like Todd and Mike. One of the big things that comes up, a big question that comes up, is how long is this going to take us? And it's a difficult question to ask, and I think it's one of the questions that requires a thoughtful approach. If I think back to the last 4, maybe 5 calls I've had, when we talk to clients looking at, you know, trying to unwind their own report inventories, and they usually come to us after they've taken a look at a few to try to see how long would it take for them to rebuild them in another tool or to upgrade them to a new version of a report. Usually that number is somewhere in the range of 2 to 5 days for kind of a medium complexity report, up to 30 days. What we've been able to kind of accomplish with the Migration Assistant is to bring that number down per report kind of in the 2 to 4 hour range. And the profiling that Mike was talking about is really key there. So as everyone on this call can imagine, you know, the inputs into that kind of algorithm really make a big difference. So imagine you have 1,000 reports and it takes you 4 hours to migrate every single one of those 1,000 reports. You're looking at 2-man years there, or 2-person years. So it's an overwhelming amount of work. So it's really key that you have the discussion about profiling those reports, so you can understand which ones need to be archived, which ones can be rebuilt by end users, which ones have, you know, similar kind of structure or similar query patterns, and all of this is really kind of an engineering exercise in and of itself. So because there is no button that is available for you to just push a button and move a report from one place to the next, or from one version up to the next version of Cognos, you really want to spend a little bit of effort in the upfront engineering of the migration, because your benefit, how you get paid back, is usually in the tune of thousands of hours, spread across your organization or other organizations that help you complete those migrations. So that's my, I think if I were to, try to emphasize one point, is that spending a week in the beginning of a migration could save you a year.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the Frank Lloyd Wright quote is very apt, where you could change it in pencil up front, or change it with a wrecking bar at the job site, and we all know which one is more painful.
And of course, I think we have the best team in the world. So, I'll say, we've been through this so many times. We know our way through the forest. We can certainly point out, things to look for. So, those 1 and 2 hour meetings up front is a great way to, share a little bit of that information and find out, if you're planning a migration or planning an upgrade. It's a great way to get started, and to kind of see if it makes sense for you to engage and do one of those plans. So
great. Thanks a lot, Scott. I appreciate it. So that's the heart of the presentation, folks. We've got a lot of questions in the question pane, and we've got closing in on about 10 minutes left here. So get your, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the question pane there, and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. But stick around here through a couple of slides about Senturus and great additional resources. We do provide hundreds of free resources, just like this webinar, on our website, and we've been committed to sharing our BI expertise for well over a decade now. So again, senturus.com/resources, where you can also see recordings of other webinars, as I mentioned, the aforementioned webinars on migrations, migration blogs, other great blogs on that site. You can see all of our upcoming events and various demos of our products, including the Migration Assistant. So head over there and bookmark that. Speaking of upcoming events, we have a webinar on Friday, February 4th, 11 to 2, on 4 simple mistakes that equate to big reporting errors. So these are common data modeling and things that across BI tools, where you can introduce mistakes and how to avoid those things. And that'll be by our Centurion Patrick Powers. So go and register for that, and please join us. Quick note about training: we do offer training. Our teachers are, again, those unicorns that are fluent in multiple platforms. We offer training in Power BI, Tableau, and IBM Cognos. We offer tailored group sessions, small group mentoring, instructor-led online courses, and self-paced e-learning. And we can tailor that to meet your organization's needs and sort of mix and match those different types of training. At Senturus, we concentrate our expertise on business intelligence with a depth of knowledge across the entire BI stack. And our clients know us for providing clarity from the chaos of complex business requirements, disparate data sources, and constantly moving targets. We made a name for ourselves because of our strength at bridging the gap between IT and business users. We deliver solutions that give you access to reliable, analysis-ready data across the organization, so you can quickly and easily get answers at the point of impact in the form of the decisions you make and the actions you take. And we also help people with the aforementioned migrations in all of their various flavors. We do offer a full spectrum of services. As you can see here, I'll let you read the slide. Our consultants are leading experts in the field of analytics with years of pragmatic real-world expertise and experience advancing the state of the art. And we're so confident in both our team and our methodology that we back our projects with a 100% money-back guarantee that is unique in the industry. And as I think I mentioned before, we've been doing this for a long time, 21 plus years, with successful projects, over 3,000 of those across 1,350 plus clients. No doubt you recognize many of those logos there. We've worked across just about every industry and several functional areas, most functional areas, including Office of Finance, Sales and Marketing, Manufacturing, Operations, HR, and IT. We pride ourselves in being large enough to meet all of your business analytics needs, yet small enough to provide personalized attention. If you're interested in joining us, we are looking for the following positions there you can see. If you're interested, look at the job description over on the Senturus site, and you can email us your resume at jobs@senturus.com. And with that, we come to the Q&A. Todd et al., do you guys have any that you want to sort of lead with, since I haven't really had the chance to look at these?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of speak to a couple.
Go for it.
There were some questions about, the my folders, my content, and that does get captured. It does a full scan of the content store, so you do get 100% visibility into all that my user, my folder content that's difficult sometimes to kind of get a grasp on as to what's out there and what people are doing. So that's fully included in the inventory. Are you able to pull up the Power BI workbook, Mike?
Yeah, sure.
There's some questions about looking at some of the calculated expressions. So like if you were to look at one of the audit reports, I know those have a couple pretty good ones.
You want me to look under the audit package?
Yeah, it's the audit package.
You put me on the spot here, buddy. Okay.
I know. And let's do one of these. I think you could see, yeah, right in the middle there. So you've got, complex expressions, if-then functions, case functions, anything you could throw at it. Again, you'd have to kind of go into the query and double click it and copy and paste this. You can kind of get all that good stuff, all in one screen, just clicking reports, very easy to find. So that's another question someone had. Yeah, that was a good one. Kind of ugly nested if statement.
Yeah, that's gnarly. You wouldn't want to retype that if you don't have to.
I know a lot of people in this webinar, based on the poll, we're looking at more of just cleaning up their Cognos environment. And I know we sort of had this originally, focused on migrations, but just to speak to that a bit more, that audit information is going to be extremely valuable. I know I've had lots of customers over the years who have asked, what we want to clean up a lot of these old reports, what's being used, what isn't being used, and the audit data is a good start. Like you mentioned earlier, it's on demand. So if I run a report, it's in there. It tells me when I ran it. So if I ran it 5 years ago and I still have that data, I can see it hasn't been run in 5 years and I ran it and that's it. For all those reports that haven't been run, you're kind of limited as to, what you can see as far as that. So because we do that full inventory, we capture every single report, we then sync it up with that audit data. We can see all the reports that haven't been run that are just sitting out there not being used. And those are easy candidates to just archive. So we can grab all those, either delete them, put them in a folder, export it and archive it, get it out of the system. So that's a very quick and easy way to clean up your Cognos environments. If you're talking about, thousands, tens of thousands of reports, just get all that junk out of there. I'm trying to think of other use cases that we've had, for people staying on Cognos and cleaning it up. It's interesting because we in my mind, I think of, how I would use a tool, and then we get involved with the customer and they've got just different ways of thinking of going about things. One of the interesting ones we did was sort of I call it almost like a reverse lineage. When I think of Cognos, I look at the report and I want to get down to the database, but a client we just finished a project up with wanted to kind of do the reverse. They wanted to say, show me all the reports that are hitting this table in this field. And because we have that full path of, report down the database, we could actually go the reverse method and then say, we found 25 reports that are all referencing this field. And it kind of gives you almost like an impact analysis of, if I was to delete this table or make a change to this field, what would that do to my Cognos environment? What reports would be affected? And maybe it's nothing, maybe it's a major impact that, tens or hundreds, thousands of reports are going to be massively affected by removing or changing something in a table. So just kind of interesting, as this product matures, to see, the different ways we can kind of just slice and dice this information and just look at your Cognos environment in different ways. Let's see, what else do we have here? Someone did ask about, why we use the Power BI dashboard. We do have, as Mike mentioned earlier too, the corresponding Cognos reports that look similar to the Power BI workbook that Mike was showing. It's just sort of a matter of preference. We can work with either one. The Power BI is just a little easier because it's portable. We can just take a file and just load it right into Power BI and point it at your database, and that's it. The Cognos, obviously, to get stuff into Cognos, it's a bit more work. You kind of have to create those deployment packages, import, an FM model or a data module, and the reports that go with it. There's a little bit more administration in Cognos involved, but we definitely have a bunch of reports that we could show you as well if you're interested and you want to kind of use Cognos instead of Power BI. I don't know, Mike, do you have anything you wanted to touch on that I missed? I'm just looking through the list here.
Let's see. So there's a lot of just talks about getting that workbook and stuff like that. It's really that's something that we generate as part of an engagement, as part of that assessment and whatnot. So we don't really provide the workbook, just sort of out there.
We do have an online version, right? On our
right. We do, yeah.
It's published out. Again, it's like almost the exact same one you have. But if you want to kind of just play around with it and explore, it is on the Senturus.com website. I think under resources, or maybe it's under the migration assistant.
It's under the products, I want to say. Products, migration assistant. So if you go to this area here and then kind of scroll down, you have a dashboard here that you can go to. So I'll drop this link into the chat so you can grab that if you want. But if you want to talk about this some more, again, those first calls are completely free. We're happy to discuss that sort of stuff with you. Probably appropriate because we're getting to the top of the hour too. Many of you have reached out to us in the chat there, but we want to make sure you go ahead and reach out to us. You can reach us at info@senturus.com. You can call us if anyone still picks up the phone anymore. And we'd like to first of all thank Todd and Song for helping out and providing some great question answering there and color commentary, and thank all of you for taking time out of your undoubtedly busy schedules to join us on this Knowledge Series event. So we hope to see you on an upcoming event or to hear from you about your migration or business analytics needs. So feel free to reach out to us. And again, thanks for your time and have a great rest of your day.